Hi guys. We're going to talk about Mr. George Washington today. Alright. Now, I know we have all heard that Mr. George Washington was our first president. Did you guys know that he was the first president on the moon, though?
Wow.
Okay. Well, he never was on the moon, just so you know. But Mr. George Washington was our father of our country, basically. That's what people call him. He was born on February 22nd, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia. His mother's name was Mary. His dad's name was Augustine. He was one of 5 children. 2 of them died when they were very young, so had a little bit less in the family there. Basically, 4 of the other kids were with another wife. So he was really the only kid from his mom, Mary. Now, when he was 6, his parents moved to Stafford County, Virginia. And they were tobacco farmers. And basically, farmers were based on how many slaves they had. So anything with 20 or more slaves in their farmland was based like a big estate. And one interesting fact was, nobody probably knows this, but he was homeschooled by his father and his oldest brother. So we all know that he's very educated, right? Or it seems like. And he was actually homeschooled. The actual population of his colony was half black and half basically people working with his family. And some people were free slaves, some weren't. Now, the knowledge that he gained from that, and he was a surveyor. Basically, a surveyor was somebody that was going over terrain and figuring out what was in Virginia. And that helped him out in the militia later on in life. So that was very valuable information. He became a surveyor at the age of 17, so super, super young. As a career, obviously, he was a planter, and they were doing tobacco. Over the years, his oldest brother, went to Barbados. And in Barbados, he actually ended up dying. Right before he died, he married a woman that was very wealthy. And she had 5 million acres of land that George inherited. So that's how he became super wealthy. Now, at that time, in 1752, in Virginia, the new governor split up the area in 4 specific areas in Virginia. And what they were doing there was each militia would cover a specific area. So at the age of 20, he ended up getting one of those areas. And he thought he stood no chance. At the age of 21, he became a master mason of Freemasons, which was basically like a lifelong influence to him. Now, in 1753, there was a growing rivalry in between the British and the French. And this was also known as the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, that went from 1754 to 1763. And this brought pretty good opportunities for him. He was sent over to dispatch to warn a French commander that there were further movement on the territory that was claimed by Britain. And when he was on his way back, he was writing a diary. This diary ended up getting published in Williamsburg, and that ended up giving him a promotion to be a lieutenant colonel. So by the age of 22, he was a lieutenant colonel. And this really, again, he's super young, so he's learning very quickly. On January 6, 1759, Washington married Martha Custis. Martha was a widow. She had 2 of her own children, and George never had any of his own kids because he ended up being considered sterile after he had tuberculosis and smallpox. So he ended up raising his kids with her. He, at the same time, was in love with a woman named Sally. Sally was found by some letters that they had. So they found some kind of letters that are still around right now stating that he was talking back and forth with her at the same time. Regardless of that, Washington ended up getting more land and a higher status in life from his wife because she had a ton of land as well. So he gained wealth from her as well. Now, he lived a pretty high-class lifestyle. His favorite thing to do was fox hunting, which was considered like a leisure activity at the time. He also imported luxury goods from England, and in exchange he had tobacco exchange, so that was his export. Many people that were planters were in very bad debt, and this was because as a commodity price, tobacco would fluctuate so much that people would get in debt. So what he did was he diversified. He ended up having wheat as his main product instead of tobacco. And then he also had fishing, milling, horse breeding, and spinning and weaving as part of his way of doing business, which helped out a ton. In April of 1775, Washington came out to say that he was ready to fight a war. Washington had everything going for him, especially the support from the Virginian people. Before he knew it, he was launched by General Howe in a massive attack to seize New York. This was known as the Battle of Long Island. And this was at the time considered the independent United States. So, good, right? This and a few other victories sent him from New York into New Jersey. After the war, Washington went back to Mount Vernon, which was actually his home place that he was with his wife. And he became part of the General Society of Cincinnati, while he did not want to do anything in politics at the same time. So it seems like a political thing, but he hated politics, so he tried to stay away from it. At this time, he was trying to experiment with different crop rotations, and he started getting involved with the Potomac River. In 1787, Washington went to a convention in Philadelphia and ended up being elected the presiding officer. Once the Constitution came into play, that's when he was unanimously elected as the president. Now, here's another interesting fact. He is the only president ever to get 100% of the electoral votes. Right? So that's pretty cool. He ended up being a fan of Barbados rum, and this was because he went to Barbados for his brother, right? So he insisted that that was going to be the drink when he went to his inauguration as president. And he was also awarded $25,000 a year salary, which is a ton of money if you think about it back in the day. He refused the money because he was a wealthy person, and he considered himself just part of the population, right? Well, long term, he ended up accepting the money because he felt that he didn't want other people, when they were trying to get elected, to feel that they had to be super wealthy to be president. So he ended up taking the money. So I thought that was pretty smart. And he wasn't part of any political party, so he thought that he was going to be forced into one. Never really had to. One other thing to know, he did not like Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson did not believe that the United States should have been a very wealthy, powerful nation just off of like a financially strong base. But Alexander Hamilton did, who was the Secretary of Treasury. So they got along real well. In 1791, there was an excise tax imposed on alcohol. This was protested especially in Pennsylvania. And then Washington had his farewell address in 1796. Today, he is buried in Mount Vernon, and he ended up dying from pneumonia. When he retired, he went back home. He started going around on his croplands, and he ended up getting sick because he was out the night before in like heavy snow, rain, sleet. The next day he got pneumonia, 24 hours later he passed away. When they made another tomb for him, they locked it up and they threw the key into the Potomac River. So still today, his key is somewhere out there. That's all I got on George Washington. How long was that?